The show is brought to you by Rudus Metal Detectors, makers of the Alter 71. Discover new possibilities at rutus.com.pl. The show is also made possible from donations from wonderful people and companies like yourself. Please head on over to gdapod.com and look on the top right for the menu button and find the donate button and help us out. With donations, we are able to get better equipment and also create better content for you guys to listen to by getting better guests and actually being able to visit some of these locations ourselves and talk with the people right there on the field during live metal detecting and treasure hunting events. So please head on over to gdapod.com and help us out with a small donation. Both myself and 42, not to mention, and producer Luke and producer Dave really appreciate it. Thanks so much. In 1798, on a small island off of Nova Scotia, two boys find an amazing discovery. A possible location of a treasure that might be buried more than 100 feet down. Now, almost 200 years later, we are still wondering exactly what is the secret of Oak Island. We got a really very special guest for today's final episode. This is the last James McQuiston episode, and we're going to be bringing everything that he's been talking for the last two episodes together and find out exactly, does Scotland hold the key for Oak Island? How about the Knights Templar or the Freemasons of Edinburgh? Exactly how do three families who helped birth two different nations combine together to make the history of Oak Island something that might be truly amazing? James McQuiston has spent years doing the research to get all these together, and we think that this is the true answer to the secret of Oak Island. So join me on the final bit of the talk with James McQuiston, author, historian, and star of the TV show The Curse of Oak Island. We pick up the show where James was talking with the Freemasons at the lodge in Edinburgh.
So I got done with my half hour. I was watching my iPhone to make sure I wasn't going over. I get done and I said, well, are there any questions? The next hour they spent asking questions about Oak Island. I wasn't even supposed to talk about it. They questioned me for another hour about that. So I got done, and so I was selling some books and talking to people, and they were showing me some of their documentation, and I was showing them some of mine. And this old guy was standing in the wings the whole time. And then when everybody left, he came up here and he said, I can't believe it. He said, I've spent 40 years on this and trying to find out what you found out. He said, I think you have the connection I've been looking for 40 years. And boy, did I feel good about that, because even the most ardent skeptic they had in the room was coming up and saying, yeah, I believe you, So I've had such good response from people. I've given a lot of talks at higher education centers, and they have smaller rooms, like 20 to 30 people, but they're always sold out every time I do it. And then the local library opened it up for me to give a talk, and the paper in here, he put it in the paper, and their room capacity was only 125 people. They filled it up and turned 30 more people away. And I sold a ton of books that day. I want to tell you, I sold a ton of books. And that was my best day ever for book sales. But they're all available on Amazon. Now, they're through Amazon's distribution. They're supposed to be available at some brick and mortar stores and like at other agreeable booksellers besides Amazon.
Yeah.
But principally, I always send everybody to Amazon because they're all right there listed right in a row. And I actually publish through Amazon. So, of course, I want to go through them. But I also purchase them in bulk, not a lot of bulk because it costs me too much money. But
yeah, of course.
You know, if I have 3 talks coming up, I might buy 100 or 120 books, and then I'll be able to take them to the talks and sell them that way too. So, but I'm not getting rich on it. And anybody that thinks I'm just doing all this, I mean, I'm retired now, and I obviously need the extra money. So I love it when somebody buys the book. But I just want everybody that's in. There's 3.5 million people that watch Oak Island. I want all 3.5 million of them to know this theory, however they can get it, because it's this theory compared to some constellation that happens to fit Oak Island if you twist and turn it and resize it the right way, or just a generic, the Knights Templar came here, or just a generic, the Vikings or whatever. With
the
evidence.
Egyptians, I've heard it all.
Yeah, the Egyptians and the Romans were there too, you know. And I think aliens in UFOs were there. Some people, you know.
I'm sure some of those ones have been showing up, but they just haven't made it onto the air.
And I know in your world, because I did just a very small amount of detecting, and I had no idea what I was doing, but I was lucky in a couple cases. And, you know, once you find it, you want to find out what it is, you know, and you want something concrete. You don't want somebody to say, I think a UFO dropped that. You know, you want to, you know, and one of the finds that I made was pretty cool, was a little truck at a lighthouse. The place had never been scanned, and we weren't actually supposed to be there, but one of the board members asked me to, and I just rented the wrong kind of detector, you know, that would detect a pop cap or anything. Yeah. But we got lucky.
There's no such thing as anything that detector that doesn't.
Yeah, well, this was one for it was from a hardware store to detect where gas lines were, or where stakes for surveying were, and that kind of stuff. So when I was in the right place, I was getting hit every 2 minutes, but everything I dug up was junk. But at this lighthouse grounds, we were right off the side of a path, because I had read that if you know, that's a great place to metal detect, because things would fall on the path and roll into the ground and get lost. And there happened to be a tree right there. So we were going along the edge of the path, and we hit a big hit. Dig it up. It's a little truck from the 1930s, and there was only ever one young boy that lived at that lighthouse with his parents, who were the keepers, and that was the period that he lived in. Oh. So logic says that he is the actual guy. We know his name and everything. He's gone now, you know, but that he is the actual guy who lost his truck next to that tree when he was playing, and it got buried in leaves and then dirt and whatever until I walked by with a metal detector and pulled it out, you know. And so beautiful. I know that you guys want verification. You don't want just, you know, I found a bunch of junk. You want to, if you know, especially if it's something unique. And that's kind of the way I am. I'm detecting through these books, and I want them verified and connected and whatever. And they're up there digging in dirt, trying to do the same thing. So we're all trying to find our treasures and verify them the same way, kind of.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. Yeah, no, the more people that read this, it's just like, you know, you have your theories. Maybe somebody that's reading it might have something that connects further to exactly what you're saying. Maybe there's a Ramsey in Washington State who can trace his family back to the Nova Scotia area 300 years ago. And that might be the one little clue that you needed. You know, somebody might own the deed to the island from back at that time. They might have it in their paperwork, and they just haven't been paying attention to it. You never know what can be out there. So the more people that get this information, the more we can spitball around this stuff. And I mean, honestly, you've created the biggest spitball I've ever seen. I'm not gonna argue on that one, but there might be just, you know, somebody might be able to put that one little clue in there that could solidify your theory.
And right now, they've requested that I work with 2 people that could be those kinds of people, and one of them I can't talk about at the moment. No, but the other one is, he wrote a book with a partner back several years, and it talked about William Phipps. but in their mind, they had thought that he had taken part of that Spanish galleon treasure up there. But so they asked me if I would. The partner that was really hot on that idea has passed away. But the Oak Island team asked me if I would work with the other partner and share information back and forth on Phipps and see what we could decide. So they gave me his email address and I wrote him. And he said, yeah, he said it was my partner that was really into the Concepcion Spanish galleon treasure. That wasn't ever high on my list, but we did do a lot of research on Phipps, and a lot of it's not in our book. We have a little booklet. So I'm going to send you the little booklet and a copy of my book. And then when you're done scanning or reading the little booklet, send it back to me with a copy of your book. So that's just That's just happened last week, and I haven't got it yet. So that's going to be a whole new, I'll be able to add all the William Phipps research they did to all the William Phipps research I did and fill in, it'll just keep. It's like a tapestry. This is the way I think of it. It's like a tapestry. You're looking through the backside of it. So you can basically see like it's a deer running through the hills or whatever, but you can't, you don't see that clarity that you want. But the more it's filled in, the more that tapestry is filled in, the better you see the big picture. And so I'm going to be working with him. And then this other gentleman wrote a book, but it's not out yet. And it's top secret. I was told by both Doug and Prometheus, keep my damn mouth shut.
Okay, so do that.
But it talks about a whole new thing that might verify my theory. And so I don't even know I've never seen any of the writing in the book or anything. So all I know is they told me a little bit about it and then said, if you hear anything or whatever, don't say anything, because we're right in the, when you're going up that hill of research, you don't want to get tripped, right? Just as you're getting to the top and fall all the way back down, you want to keep that momentum going.
Yeah.
And so you don't want anybody out there, including, they respect me as a researcher, but they don't want me to be the guy that trips them up as they're getting to the top of their hill.
Yeah.
On it. And they're going to share it all with me when they're done, but they're not going to share it with me before. So I was just told, this much now. That's all that's all you know. And if and otherwise we're going to have to kill you.
So your episode just aired on April 9th. The episode is season 6, episode 20. It's called Short Days, Tall Nights, like as in Knights of the Round Table. Yeah.
Nova Scotia, yeah.
Yeah. So definitely check it out. Now, I have questions. I have a couple questions. Now,
okay.
If we're talking about Templars that are coming out of England, I want to go back to the cross again that's on the island. Now, the orientation, has anybody actually looked into two things that has to deal with the cross? And I know this is kind of, I'm kind of getting into a weird subject, but if we're dealing with Templars, or if we're dealing with, Freemasons, we're going to be talking about angles and directions and everything else. Especially if they're going to try and mark an area where something has been buried without putting a big arrow on the ground pointing straight at it. So a cross like the one that that we know about, with the 6 stones, I believe it's 4 stones going in the vertical and 2 on the cross.
Yeah.
Do we know the distance between stones? Has somebody measured the distance between the stones, the angles from each portion of the cross, to try and figure out a correlation between an ancient measuring system?
I believe they have for the ancient measuring system, but recently 2 theories were put forth. One was the one that was on the show just before mine, where he was able to connect points on the cross that pointed almost directly to the money pit, and the point that he triangulated to was the last one that they dug when they had a bunch of problems there. But another gentleman, it was online, it's still on there on YouTube, and he had what I thought was a totally cornball theory, and it was about the way something on the dollar bill that if you compared it to Nolan's Cross, or held a miniature-sized Nolan's Cross to the bill or something, it would point to the money pit. And I thought, well, my God, how far are you going to stretch this thing with crazy theories? But I looked up that design on the dollar bill, and it was designed and designed under and approved by Franklin Roosevelt.
Somebody who actually visited the island.
Who actually worked there. Excuse me. His grandfather Delano, he got that name. His middle name is Delano from his mother's side. And his grandfather Delano was a investor in Oak Island. And he had made millions they say in the opium trade from China. He was a shipping magnate, and
could have been at that time.
His family had come from one of the other ships that came with the Mayflower. That's how early they had gotten into that same area. So there's another family, the Delano family, that you could say you could potentially, and I might in the future do it, but try to track them all the way from when they landed there, who was related to who, how it got down to grandfather Delano, how he invested in Oak Island, and how he told his grandson Franklin about it. And Franklin never quit loving it. He even after he had become disabled and towards the end of his career, he had gone up to Halifax and with the intention of going over to Oak Island, but at the time there was no causeway, and the only way he could get there was on a small boat and come up to the island and then go up Smith's Cove up over the hill to the money pit. So with him being in a wheelchair, the logistics were just made it impossible. So instead, some of the searchers at the time went to Halifax and met with him there. So that was the best he could do. But one of the people that owned a good share of the island in the 30s, he's the guy that built the road by the swamp, as a matter of fact, same guy. He wrote a letter to Franklin that still exists, and he said that he felt, essentially paraphrased, he felt the money pit could have been built as early as 1635. And my theory says 1632. That's only 3 years off out of hundreds of years of searching and hundreds of years of it being buried there, whatever. He's only 3 years off from mine, and he based his totally on the way maps were drawn. He explained it somehow, or I don't know if he really explained it in the letter or just said that was his source, but he was explaining it on maps and how they were drawn and how he came about to. He actually said from 1635 to 1645 was his target time for the burial, what's interesting about that is this was before the days of DNA.
Yeah.
So we didn't even, or not DNA, but
carbon dating.
So we didn't even have those carbon dating records that showed that window of 1620 to 1660. His window was 1635 to 1645. And my target date was 1632.
Yeah.
So it's like three different, talk about triangulating. We've got three different sources coming together, pointing to roughly that time period, that there is no other real evidence, not real evidence. There's a lot of theory, but there's no other real evidence that points to that, anything but that time period. Yeah. And the only people that were involved there at that time period were William Alexander and Al Strachan and that crew, the Ramseys and all that, so it's very exciting to be in on this. But first of all, just to be in on the show that I was a fan of before I even wrote them.
Yeah.
But also, I'm a Scottish historian, even though I live in the United States, I'm a recognized Scottish historian, and I've been researching clan histories for 20 or 30 years. So it's all coming together for me.
Yeah.
I'm not making it up. That's the thing about it. I mean, I might, like Rick said, he was 100% right at the very closing scene there when he was by himself in their film, and he said the real theories are recognized by the way they connect the dots. And James has connected a lot of dots. Now, he said, now granted, a lot of facts into dots. And he said, now granted, some of the facts are interpretations of the facts, but there's a lot of dots that are forming a really nice picture, and that's exactly what's happening. It's kind of like me saying the back of the tapestry.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's even, I kind of hate to say it because I've already dedicated almost 3 years to this, but I don't think it's even remotely over.
No,
because
of course not.
What I found in the last few, about the Ramseys and their connection, and it continues almost every day. And Rick called me. It was funny because he's called me 4 times. The first 3 times I was sitting down, and I felt like I needed to sit down further into a chair. And he's so polite and gentlemanly. He's just the nicest guy. But this time he called me, which was just about a week ago. I was up on a stepladder with a hose in my eaves troughs trying to clean all the crap up. And he calls, he says, Mr. McQuiston. He calls me Mr. McQuiston, and he said, this is Rick Lagina. I wondered if you had a few minutes to talk. And I said, well, I'm at the top of a stepladder with a hose in my gutters, but I'll get right down. He said, oh, I don't want to bother you. I'll call you back. I said, no, you won't. Don't hang up. So I got down off the ladder, went over, shut the hose off, and went and sat on the steps. And I said, okay, what's going on? So that's when he told me Prometheus was going to call me again to talk about a few things. And he said, I don't really know what they are. It's none of my business. But so a few days later, I talked to them for a little over an hour. But again, I don't know what the future holds for me as far as being involved. And I don't know where they're going specifically with their theories. I have a few clues, just like I didn't even know I was going to be on the show on April 9th. Nobody would tell me if I was even going to be on the show. And I thought, well, here, I signed this NDA saying I wouldn't tell anybody if I was going to be on a show. And I don't even know if I am going to be, so I couldn't tell anybody anyway. But I got like 3 emails, 2 from Doug and 1 from a guy from Prometheus that hinted around. Like, I don't think you're going to have to wait much longer or things like that. But, they wouldn't come right out and say it. But they were keeping me hanging on because they wanted to use me towards the end of the season. So then 2 weeks before that, Rick called and said, there's only 3 or 4 episodes left, and I guarantee you're going to be on one of them because I talked personally to Kevin Burns, the owner, executive producer of Prometheus, and you are going to be on the show, but I can't tell you which one because I don't know. So he said, all I can tell you is to just keep watching. So that's the first I actually knew I was going to be on the show. And then when I knew what episode it was going to be was because of the week before they showed the previews, and I saw me in my red flannel shirt. And I have to tell you, the reason I wore that was because most of my shirts, virtually all of them, are dark blue or black. But I own that one Woolrich type red flannel shirt, so I can be a rugged guy in the winter, whatever. Well, when they filmed me in 2017, I wore just a dark navy blue shirt, and I saw some of the footage, and I sucked right back into the wall behind me. They have good lighting, and it was like, who is this guy? You see a head bobbing around or whatever. So that's not going to happen this year, because if they're going to use me, people are going to see going to see me. So I wore the brightest shirt I had, which was that red flannel shirt. Right. I got ribbed about it. People saying, well, you could have at least wore a tie with it. Or
stand out. That's how it works.
But I was doing a local, not local, but fairly local podcast. And we had a visual going too. They just recorded it, the audio, but we had the visual going. And one of the guys was wearing a red flannel shirt, and I was wearing mine too. And I said, well, I see you wore the official uniform of Oak Island. And they were laughing. And the other guy said, you know what? We should register an Oak Island tartan, a red flannel, find a pattern that nobody else has ever used, and get it registered with whoever you register with in Scotland, and say, this is the official Oak Island tartan, and then we'll start selling products and making it. So right now, since nobody else is claiming it, I'm claiming that the red flannel pattern is
Oak Island
the
tartan.
Official tartan of Oak Island. I just don't know which pattern. I don't want to get in trouble with some big Scottish clan with broadsword.
Now, the next question, we actually have one of the guys, Kevin Whitmore, He's out there. He wants to know if you could put a good word in for him with Gary Drayton to bring his ORX. It's a XP metal detector, one of the best on the market, over and let him give a hand to help detect the area.
Okay. Yeah, he'll have to. I'll have to get his contact information, but just give me the name again. I'll write it down. Craig?
Kevin Whitmore,
Okay.
Whitmore.
And is he well enough known in the trade that?
Yeah, he's really good. He's using the brand new XP metal detector, probably one of the two top of the line metal detectors that's out there, and not a lot of people. I mean, it's recently come out, but not a lot of people are as adamant with it as he is. I think he would be a great add to the show.
Well, speaking of Gary, I'll tell you a couple stories about him.
Yeah.
Since he's in your world. First of all, he isn't there full time through the summer like most of them are. They bring him in when they clear a lot, because the lots you mentioned earlier about how the deep or thick the forests are. Well, a lot of that was cut off at one point for farms and stuff, but it's like tanglewood is the best way I can describe it. So there are a lot of places you can't even walk into. So when they would get permission on different lots or determine that they wanted to explore a lot, they'd have to bring a brush hog in to brush hog it. So, so they don't want him standing around, paying them whatever for that. So they would get sites ready for him and then bring him in maybe like a month at a time. And he'd hit all these sites and he'd film it all. And then he'd go home for a while because he's got a wife and 2 kids. And, he's got he makes all his money on metal detectors.
Yeah.
He works on Gold Coast and he's got some booklets. He's written, I think, about 18 of them. And he gives seminars at shows, things like that. But, so he's making it however he can. But one of the ways he's making it is being on that show. And so they put him up at the same hotel where they put me up at. So I drank a lot of beer with Gary Drayton. Let's put it that way. And, of course, then your lips get looser, so he tells stories. But he's 10 times the clown in person as he is on the show. Everybody on that show is exactly who you see him, except him, because he's much crazier than that in real life. But, that's not what the show's about. But so a couple of things about him. One is he used to have hair below his shoulders. And there's one picture online now, but he showed me one of him in a bar standing by a guy, and it was down to his shoulders. But I just saw one online just the other day that showed it down below the shoulders. The other thing, then this is a big story about him, but you're not allowed to treasure hunt in Spain on the beaches.
Yeah.
I don't know yeah. Well, he did. And what he did was he rigged up something, or he bought it, I don't know how, but it hung around the waist. So once you were waded up into the water up to your waist, nobody would know that that's what you were doing. So he would wade along, and when he got a hit, he'd just slip down into the water, dig it up and put it in a satchel and come back up and keep walking. He got caught 4 times, and sent out of Spain. And he told me in handcuffs. Wow. And I said, well, how do you get back in? He said, well, they've never confiscated my passport. So he said, I just wait a couple of years. Everybody forgets about it. I go back to Spain and do it again. He said, I haven't done it in years. But he said, I did that four different times in Spain, and they put me on a plane in handcuffs, sent me out of the country. So I'm like, that's how crazy the guy is. I mean, he just, he's done whatever he has, but he's found so much stuff. And I don't know if you've ever seen that emerald ring he found.
Yeah, actually, looking right at it. It's the gold one with the 3, 6, 9 emeralds on it.
Yeah. And he said it's the best example of a Spanish ring from that era, and that anybody's found. And I've heard, he told me he thought it was worth about $350, but I've heard online that they think it's worth about $500,000. Wow. But he's found well over $1 million worth of stuff, and he lives somewhere around Fort Lauderdale, so he's not living in a cheap place.
No,
and he's got a wife and 2 kids, so he's making he's making money at it however he can. But he's a very funny guy, and he was. We were leaving. My wife and I were leaving one day to go back to the island, and he was leaving in his car. I said, "You going down the island?" He said, "No, I'm going to play Celebrity Walmart." And I said, "What's Celebrity Walmart?" And he said, "Well, I'm up here. They get me up here for a month or so. I got to have stuff. So the best place to go is to Walmart." And he said, "Everybody knows me." He said, "I can't go down a single aisle in Walmart without somebody wanting their picture taken with me." So he said, "I call it Celebrity Walmart."
He sounds like somebody I should try and get on the show.
He is. And the other guy that's the card is, of course, is Dave. And but he's just like you see him. I mean, they're not holding much back on him. But he has that one favorite word that he likes to say a lot that they have to bleep all the time.
Yeah.
And so the first year we're there, and I'm sitting there with my wife, and we're sitting there with Rick and a few other people, but he doesn't know us from Adam, and he's just walking up to us. And my wife says, "There's the bleep bleep man." And he says, "You're bleep bleep right, except you didn't say bleep bleep." And I'm like, "Geez, you don't even know us. You're in mixed company." And he didn't faze him one bit, because with him, I guess that word with him is second nature, and he doesn't think anything about saying it. But we all laughed so hard about it. Rick, everybody was laughing about it, you know. So, but he is just like you see him. I had quite a long conversation with him, and I talked with Dan Henske for a while, and my wife talked with him a lot. And he's so quiet on that show, but he's a genius. And I read some of the stuff that he wrote. He was cataloging their searches. It is so detailed and engineer-type talk and everything. And I know that's why they keep him around. He's not this big personality on the show, but he's this big brain that knows so much, you know. And the only person I didn't meet Dan, which I felt so bad about that. I didn't meet him either year. He was, I guess, not feeling well both years, and it was in early spring.
Blankenship, you mean?
Pardon me?
Blankenship?
Yeah, Dan. I didn't meet him, and now he's passed away, so I never will. And then Alex wasn't on the island when I was there, so I didn't meet him. But I met everybody else. I only met Marty for a few minutes, and you know, he's a multi-millionaire. I've heard where he's worth $100 million. And so his attitude, you know, is different. You know, it's very bad. I mean, he should love my theory. He never sat in on any of the 3 filmings they did of me, but he's so pragmatic that because my theory is so pragmatic, he should be loving it. And I was told, the fact that he wasn't there, don't read anything into that, because he's a very busy man. He's got the winery, got the energy business. He got out of the oil and gas business, and he's in the renewables now.
Good.
So they said, don't read anything into that. But I only was able to talk to him for less than a 5-minute period. So that was it. But I've talked to Rick many times in person on the phone, and he doesn't email at all because he doesn't want to get into the email trap of getting 10,000 emails every day and, you know, not getting back to people and all that. But he did answer one email one time, but that was it. And so even when he was talking to me 2 weeks ago or a week ago, I guess it was a week ago, he said, I don't want you to ever think that you're bothering us with your emails. He said, I know you send tons of emails, but he said, every one of them gets read by several people, and we all appreciate it. And even if we don't respond, we appreciate it. So he said, please keep sending the emails, you know, because that's how this all developed. I mean, it was all piecemealed. I'd find this out this day, and it's, you know, titled Holy Cow, you know, and then the next time was Holy something else, you know, and you're not going to freaking believe this one, you know, and so that's where this built up, and that's why they suggested I write the books, because it was going to get lost. The only place all this research existed was in all these emails. Yeah. So they said, you got to put this in book form before it gets lost, you know. So essentially, I printed out or I made digital copies of all of the emails I sent, so I'd have them for reference, so I could put it together. So that's how the whole thing happened, and it's still happening. I still sent them something today, and I think I sent them something 2 days ago that of significance, you know. So it's cool. It's a lot of fun, and believe me, I keep saying I want to do other things in my life. I even have other books I want to write, but I'm so stuck on this right at the moment. And I was told by one of the anonymous people up there that I have islanditis, and it's a disease that there's absolutely no cure for.
Yeah, that's you see that through history. It started in 1798, I think, and it's been constantly present on that island up till now.
And everybody that gets involved, look at Fred Nolan and Dan Blankenship were both there for about almost 50 years apiece.
Yep.
They both essentially died living on the island. I mean, they weren't on the island. I don't think when each one of them passed away, and now you got Rick. He's I was told by the same person that he was there 7 days a week during the season. And then Doug told me that he was putting in 10 to 12 hour days. He said, I have never seen anybody so enthusiastic and
dedicated
about anything, anywhere. He just goes. He knows no end to it. And I'll tell you a story about him that he, we were standing there talking. It was after most of the hullabaloo had gone by and everything, and we were just like doing some chit-chatting before I had to leave. And he reaches in his pickup truck and gets a chainsaw out. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he said, well, we've got dynamite planted up there, and that was that seismic drilling they were doing.
Yeah.
And just small charge. He said, we can't let the tourists get near them, so I got to go cut some new tour paths. And I'm thinking to myself, you are the star of the show. Go get one of these flunkies to cut trees and go sit in the chair and talk to the tourists. But he never quits, and his hands are beat up. And I said to him 2 times ago when he called, the day he called to tell me I was going to be on the show, I said, what appeals to me about the show, what appealed to me before I ever even thought about writing you guys is, it's just like as if I went and got some of my buddies and said, hey, throw your chainsaw and your shovel in the pickup truck and see if Billy will bring the backhoe, and we're going to go up there and figure this damn thing out. And he says, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it's been. It's just been us guys going up there trying to figure it out, and in any way they can. And they've got way more sophisticated, with the seismic drilling and well, I guess, I don't know if I'm revealing anything because I think it's been online, but I think they seismic drilled the swamp, which sounds like it'd be impossible. But from what I understand, and this isn't coming from them, it's just coming from what I found online already, is that they drained some of the swamp, then they sprayed or spread somehow some kind of dirt over it, and then they put 4x8 sheets of plywood. They made paths all across the swamp and set those dynamite charges across the swamp so they could see if there were any crevices or caverns or gateways to the treasure underneath the swamp too. And that's all I know about it. I actually saw an aerial photo, I think a drone took it, of all the plywood spread over the swamp. So I guess they did that too. And I don't know if that'll be in this last episode, or maybe if it was fruitless, they just won't bother putting it on ever.
We'll see. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's 10 billion things that they're doing there that we just don't see. Theories and ideas that they're trying, and we just don't see it because it doesn't make the air.
Oh, absolutely. And along those lines, I was filmed 3 separate days, and I would say it was a total of 5 hours probably. We did a couple hours in 2017, and we did a couple hours in the war room in 2018, and then we went up to New Ross for about an hour at the foundation. And they told me in the beginning, the first year, they said, we don't care if you talk for an hour or 2 hours, we're only going to give you 5 or 6 minutes on air. Well, they gave me a lot more than that. They gave me almost 15 minutes, so I was so happy with that. But that's the case. Now, if they did that with me, how many other people have they done that with? And I just read about a theorist today who was filmed in 2016, I think, and they brought him back in 2018, and they never used the film footage from 2016. So the point is, 5 hours for 5 minutes, of showtime, and the same thing's true going through the spoils pile. They got bucket loads of spoils to go through, but the only time you're going to see film footage is when they pull out a bone or a piece of parchment or something. But you don't see those hours and hours of digging through it by hand and spraying it with a hose or whatever. And then the paperwork. They have the tours, which sell out like a Jimmy Buffett concert, but they have to administer all that. They have, when they bring in those third-party drillers and truckers and all that, that has to have contracts somebody has to sign. The theorists, just in my case, they had to get car rental, rooms, and the schedule for me and all that set. If they have anything on loan in the museum, I know what museums are like because I loaned a postcard to a museum once and it generated like 5 or 6 pieces of paper, and I had to actually sign off them too, because they want to make sure that they have the right to display it in the museum or whatever. Yeah. So that they're going through that too. The permits with the government for can we dig in this place, and they're probably in triplicate, to 10 different committees or whatever. So just the paperwork alone has to be mind-boggling, and you never, ever see that on the show, ever. And this one person, I'll tell you about her, she is like, how they always say there's behind every great man, there's a great woman. Well, she's like the great woman behind all these guys. And she takes care of all of that, and admins and all. They have volunteers and other workers, but she's the key person. And she actually produced part of a big movie, the Titanic, part of the Titanic.
Oh, that small movie, you mean?
Right. And she has a lot of other like TV shows and things, but she wants to stay anonymous, and so she never gets filmed, and they never put her name out or anything, but she is the one that originally emailed me back and was the catalyst for getting me in there. And the first day I got there, one of the first things Rick said to me was, whatever her name is, wanted you to come here so bad and tell us your theory. That was the first thing he said. So I thanked her so many times, like, you're the reason that this all got kicked off. And she's such a nice lady and everything. So there's so much. You're 100% right that there's so much goes on that you never see. And there's probably failures that, they show a lot of the failures or disappointments, but there are probably other ones that they don't show. And so it's a big job, and it's a big job for Prometheus. And I was talking to the executive producer on site, not Kevin Burns, the big cheese, but this other guy. And he said, well, what happened was my wife and I walked up there in the morning when I was supposed to be filmed, and he looked at her and he said, you're not supposed to be here. And she said, I know. I just wanted to say hi to everybody, and then I'm going to go shopping. And he says, well, no, I'm serious. You're not supposed to be here. He said, we had a theorist come in yesterday, and he brought his son with him, and we sent him home. He didn't get to talk in the war room. And she said, all right, well, I'm going to leave in a minute. So right then, here comes Jack and Charles and Gary and Rick and a few other people probably around the corner, and they see us, and they're coming over and giving us hugs and everything. And so the producer kind of backed off a little bit. But before that happened, my wife said to him, boy, you really look tired. You look worn out. And he said, you wouldn't believe my job. He said, not only do I have to coordinate all of the filming here and everything, he said, but I got to worry about the size of the gravel on this pathway you're walking on, because if somebody trips on that gravel and breaks an ankle, I'm the guy that gets in trouble. Yep. He said, I get in trouble for everything that happens while we're here on this island. And, and you don't think of that. They're invisible. You don't ever see the camera people. And even when you're being filmed, a lot of times you don't see them. I mean, they're just so good at what they do. They film with drones, whatever, but there's just so many considerations to this whole thing that don't show in the show, and I don't know why they don't show it. If I had any complaint at all, it would be, show us some more of that nitty gritty. Don't recap so much. Show us more of them getting the truck set up or going through spoils or whatever. Show how hard people are really working.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think people would love that.
Yeah, they should do like something on the DVDs, like behind the scenes or additional footage kind of reels.
Oh, I think people would absolutely love the behind the scenes, and that's I'm telling a lot of tales out of school, but my NDA from last year is over anyway, and I'm not smearing Prometheus in any way because I have no reason to. It's not because I signed an NDA that I wouldn't. It's because I want to kiss their feet. I mean, I'm sure I can say anything bad about them, but the show is not scripted as far as I can tell anything that happened with me I've been on the island 5 different days and filmed 3 different days. Not once was I told what to say. One time I was told what not to say, because what happened was they arranged things. Like they arranged, okay, we're going to Smith's Cove. Make sure you guys, this part of the crew go down there, and these guys are going, to the money pit, so that this part of the crew goes there. And they do that in the morning. They have a production meeting. They put them all in a circle, tell them where they're going, and the Oak Island guys are there too, so everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
But after that, it's just filming and editing. So they can't know when I'm going to exactly pull across the causeway. So I got there and they said, well, we want to film you coming across the causeway, so just go back and wait, and you'll hear. They gave me a walkie-talkie, and they said, you'll hear on the walkie-talkie when to come over, because we want to make sure everybody's there and in the war room and everything. So I'm sitting around the corner there, and I hear "Action, James," and I just burst out laughing, because I was already smiling from ear to ear that I was even going to be on the island and on the show, and then I heard somebody say "Action, James." But so I come across, and I can see the drones in the air, and 2 or 3 guys on the shoreline filming me coming over. And they had told me, go up, pull up to next to Rick's truck, and Rick will greet you.
Yeah.
That's all they told me. So he does, and we're just making small talk, welcome back to the island, going in. And I didn't know that everybody and his brother was going to be in the war room, because there was only 2 trucks there. And I walk in, and Jack was there, Gary, Charles, Craig, and Rick. Anybody you see in that film footage with sitting there with Doug Kroll. So I walk in there, and I said, wow, you got the whole gang here. Yeah, I mean, I was just amazed. And the guy says, oh, we can't have that on the film. Can you just walk in again? So they had me go out the door and walk back in and not say it. So that is the only time they told me not to say something, but they never told me to say anything. And they just edit it the way they want to edit it, and you're kind of at their mercy. But I can't complain about what they did. I wish they would have mentioned the Freemasons a little more. And if they ever have me come back, that's going to be, that Freemason nexus is going to be my theme.
Yeah.
But I can't complain, because they said 5 or 6 minutes, and I swear my segment was a good 15 minutes on the show. And so, and it's a complex theory. You've heard it today, how complex it is, and that's not even the half of it. If somebody gets Oak Island Knights and starts reading, they're going to say, man, this guy dug down to the deepest pits to find this stuff.
I've got you on video, and what I'm expecting you to do is turn the camera so I can see that wall where you got all those pictures and the yarn going from one place to another.
Well, you know what? I don't know if you're a psychic or not, but you keep bringing up significant points, because I was actually just down in Pittsburgh at a Da Vinci exhibit down there, and I got this idea in my brain that this is so complex to read and to hear, but what if I could do a diagram that would show it?
Yeah.
So I actually, while my wife was driving us home, I'm downloading screenshots of different types of wall charts and bar charts and everything that I haven't figured out which one would be best, but I'm looking for that one that would be the easiest thing for a lay person to look at. And obviously Oak Island would be the central thing that everything would radiate out about. But that's what I'm looking for right now. And I even told the guys this, that I'm trying to find a visual way where you don't have to know all the details, but you can look at this flow chart or timeline or whatever it's going to be and say, oh, yeah, you look at it for 5 minutes and then you can say, yeah, I understand it all. I mean, within reason,
Yeah.
So that's, but the one of them is exactly what you said, is like the police do for when they're trying to find a serial killer or whatever. And they've got this wall with all these notes on it and photos, and they've got the strings going every which way. And that was one of the choices of my choices. And it might be the best one, actually. It might be the best of all the choices. A lot of them are so left brain, and I am not left brain. I love databases only because you can sort. Like I could sort for the year 1632 and see what was happening, or sort for the name Strachan and see what's happening or whatever. But to ever build a database, I'm not your man. I'm not an accountant or a left brain person. But the visual, as you said, would be so cool, and that's what I need to do. And I wish to God I could turn around and show you that wall.
Yeah,
because I wished it was done.
Okay, then I'll call you back in a week or two. So you got a little time.
Might take longer than a week, but, and I'll probably more than likely do it on my computer because I can't. I got everything crammed into my office now from all my world travels and everything that I do. That see, the reason I have an office is because my wife would never let me have this in the house.
You see my office here.
Yeah, there's just so much crap. So, and maybe 500 books and everything, you know. So I can't cram much more in. I can walk about 10 feet to my seat in front of the computer, and that's about it. There's no sense trying to vacuum it because you'd have to empty it to run a vacuum. But anyway, so I'll probably do it as a visual on a PDF or something, maybe even in InDesign. And then when I get it done, I'll publish it out, you know, to as many sources as I can, because I have nothing against everybody learning the theory, even if they don't buy my book. I also would love people to buy the book. And a lot of times people buy all three of them when I do these shows, because they're all the exact same number of pages and size. And there's one that's gold, there's one that's blue, and there's one that's royal purple. So, you know, they look nice together and all that. But as I said earlier, if all 3.5 million people that watch Oak Island tomorrow knew this theory, I'd be thrilled to death. Because if this ends up being a theory, and I use that term "if" lightly because I think it is, but if it ends up being that after 200 some years of people trying to figure it out, I'm going to be, you know, clicking my heels a lot, you know. And I don't. Now, one of the things you sign, this is interesting with the NDA, is you sign off any right to any treasure that's found based on your theory. But that's okay too. I mean, you know, I never went into this for the money. I only wrote the first 2 books because they recommended them, and I saw their point that if these emails are lost, so is all your research. Blah blah blah. You know, but. Again, I'm never going to turn down the little bit of royalty I get on any one of these books, and it helps support my addiction to Oak Island of finding out new information every day. And there's so much out there yet. My God, there's just because they really recorded a lot back then, and a lot of it was handwritten, so it's had to have been just transcribed, and most of it is available through universities or through organizations. You know, it's not run of the mill on Facebook. You know, you have to get into the university libraries or whatever, but it's out there. And when you open up a book, there might be literally 500 notations in that book that any one of them could be the one that I'm looking for. Yep. You know, so I learned, well, and then most of them are scannable PDFs, which is the beauty of it, because I'll download the PDF and then I'll put in the word Strachan. And I'll get every note about Alexander Strachan, or I'll put in the year, you know, just like it was a database. Yeah, I'm using like databases and finding stuff. And I know I've just scratched the surface, even though I've outlined what I think is the actual story, and I base it all on documents and on the DNA science, on the weather science, on the historical timeline of not DNA. I keep saying DNA.
Carbon dating
records and weather records, and everything is jiving time-wise. So luckily, because if one of them didn't, that throws my whole theory out the window. But so far, everything is, and so I'm in that place between wanting everybody to just know the theory and everybody to buy my book. You know, But I've put so much online. I put tons of stuff online, and this is about the 4th or 5th podcast, and I'm not shy about talking about it. I mean, the only thing I hesitate to talk about is what they've told me not to.
Yeah, of course.
You know, because of the NDA. And I have to tell you, so I didn't know I was going to have sign an NDA for this next conversation I was having. And so we're heading to Pittsburgh, and I told them, well, call me about 5 because we'll be there, and I'll just make sure I'm free. So on the way, I get an email that says, you have to sign this NDA before we can talk to you. I'm like, what? I'm driving down Route 79 to Pittsburgh. How am I going to do this? So we looked for a print shop, That could download it. I could sign it. They could fax it. We get out in the country at a totally bogus listing. There's a cow out in the field, so I know it's not a print shop. So they happened to call me as I'm leaving there, and they said, did you see that you need to sign that? And I said, yeah, I'm trying to figure something out. I'm on the highway trying to get down there. And I said, well, what if I do a screenshot on my iPhone and then sign it with my fingernail in the app? Would that suffice for now? And he said, yeah, do that and do a formal email to us saying that you accept the DNA or the NDA. Well, isn't that funny? DNA and NDA. I never thought about it before. But anyway, that you accept the NDA, and then later we can do you can formally sign it and fax it to us, and that'll be sufficient. So we do the screenshot. Well, my fingers are so big and I have no nails. So it was like a gigantic magic marker signing this little thing. But my wife says, I'll sign it for you with my fingernail. So she uses her fingernail and signs it. And then I write the formal email, and then we send it off to him. And I said, will this suffice? And then he wrote back and said, yeah, we'll call you at 5. So they did. So that's how I got through that one. But how are we doing on time? Do you have time for a couple more stories?
Yeah, a couple more. We're at 2:28 right now. It looks like I'm going to be splitting this up into a 3-episode released podcast. So that'll be coming out probably over the course of the next week.
Well, do you have any more questions on your end from anybody?
No. I just got, Kevin had one question. He had a question about, has the team considered that this whole thing on the island is a smokescreen by the Knights Templar or the Masons, just set up to throw people off the scent of something?
Well, I think that, if anything, they've considered the idea that it might be a smokescreen by searchers trying to get investors by, saying they found things or whatever so that they could get a bunch of money so that they could play around being treasure hunters for free, type of a thing. But the larger point about it is that something happened because there's been too many finds. Why are 2 human bones 150 feet down in the ground?
Yeah, why is there cross-hatched wood?
Why is all these ship parts being found either on Smith's Cove or in the swamp? Why was Nolan Cross built?
Yeah.
So there's too many anomalies for something to not have happened there. So what they're trying to do is figure out what the heck that something was based on whatever available evidence there is. All the old records, the drilling, their own drilling tests that they've done. They've done a ton of core drilling.
Yeah.
Probably most people don't even know they did. Just like 2-inch core drillings. Before they did those 8-inch core drillings when they found H8, where they did 43 of them, I think. And they gridded it off like every 5 foot.
H8, that's where they did the core drilling, and they found the wood planks that were laid in opposite directions, correct?
Yeah, they found the bones, and they found some of that stained parchment and bookbinding material, leather.
Okay.
They had all that tested. All that was found in there, so they were pretty sure they were on it, and then they put down Gal 1, which they named for their parents.
Okay.
And I don't know the first 2 names. But anyway, Gal was obviously for Lagina. And somehow they missed it. They got some stuff out of there, but it wasn't like as rich as what H8 was. So they've continued to, they were guessing a lot. So that's why they wanted to do the seismic drilling, because if the dynamite shocks would point out a decent-sized cavern, and it was in a direction they intended to go anyway, that would be a place that they would go, and that's what they have been doing. Mm-hmm. And this recent one was the one that the guy pointed out by drawing from Nolan's Cross, and that's the one where they found these really long timbers that were definitely cut with an axe or an adze, as they called that one tool. They were definitely hand cut, and they weren't quite the size of railroad ties, but they were probably half the size of railroad ties. And there were tons of them in there. I mean, quite a few. They were pulling them up, and that's the first time that they ever found that quantity of reasonably intact wood that large that was definitely cut by hand, not cut with any kind of a sawmill or anything like that.
Machine.
And again, they're finding it down 100 and some feet. And what the hell's it doing down there? Somebody went to a lot of trouble to get that down there. And so I know they're working on analyzing pottery. Another thing that hasn't even been brought up at all yet, and I've been trying to work on it, is that there's one lot owned by another guy. Robert Young is his name, and he's not the movie star that played Dr. Welby. But his family's been around that area for a long time, and he owns that one lot, and he has not been cooperating with them even before the Laginas got involved. So it isn't the Laginas' fault or anything, but he has been doing his own metal detecting, and he wasn't telling anybody about it. So just a few months back, he put out a website showing some of his finds, and they were in the Bobby Dazzler category, like what Gary's finding. But one of them was a cricket badge from a cricket team.
Really?
Which is like, what the heck is that doing on Oak Island? So he actually showed it there. So I did a screenshot of it, and I wrote Doug, and I said, I'm going to try to find a place that can identify this. And he wrote back and said, well, we found a cricket cat badge. And I said, well, can you send me a photo? He said, well, we're not back to the island yet, but when we get back there, I'll try to find it in our junk that we have there and send you a photo of it. So I did write the largest cricket museum in the world, which is in England, naturally. And I sent the one image, and I haven't got any answer back from him, but I told him what the significance of it all was. So when I get the second picture, I'm going to write him again and say, this is some big deal here. You guys got to, because if we could trace down the team, because I looked up cricket, because, there I go again, but cricket was actually started in about 1550, and by the time the 1600s hit, it was a big gambling thing. That was the big, like horse racing is,
Yeah.
So it could well have been, those badges could well have been lost there in the 1600s. And so if they could tell me what team it was, if that record is carried forward, if the Cricket Museum could tell me what team that was, we would know if it was a Scottish team or, it might tell us something. So
I'm sure
that's
they
something
can,
that's so peripheral, but it might tell us something when we find it down to it.
I'm sure
But
they'll have some kind of record of that.
The two stories, actually 3 stories I want to tell you real quick. I'll get them out as quick as I can, but 2 of them concern how nice Rick is. The first year we went up, they had wanted us to come up more so than Prometheus. So, but they got Prometheus to pay for us, and my wife wanted to, watch me give the presentation in the war room. So she had come in and sat back in the corner. And so when the Prometheus guys came in, they said, "Oh, well, you can't stay. We've never let." I'm sorry, lost
That's
that
okay.
We've never let anybody that wasn't part of the presentation or those being presented to ever be in the war room.
Yeah,
it's against our policy, because he said otherwise it would get so out of hand. So she was kind of dejected, and when she's dejected, she goes shopping with my. So I said, "Well, here's the card," So when we had rented this big monster truck for whatever reason, I don't know why. So she gets in the truck and just gets to the causeway when she hears somebody hammering on the truck, and so she stops, and here it's Rick Lagina, and he said, "I heard what was going on in there, and you're going to be in that room." I put my foot down. And so she came back in the room, and she said, "Rick said I could be in here." And they said, "All right, well, you have to sit in that corner, and you don't say a word. Don't make any noise." And I thought to myself, my God, I've been trying to get her to do that for years, and I haven't been able to. But she said, I won't clap. I won't sneeze. Nothing. You won't know I'm here. So she did. So she got to watch it. So that was one very nice thing. So then the next year, last year, when they when they called, they said they just wanted me to come up for 2 days. They were going to film me I would arrive, the next day I'd be filmed, the next day I would leave, and they would pay for 2 nights. And I said, well, if I want to stay a little longer, can I just pay for the extra rooms? And can you book my flight for 5 days instead? Because I had something going on both weekends.
Uh-huh.
So I could stay longer than that. And they said, yeah, that's okay. As long as you pay for the extra car rental and the extra rooms, that's fine. And I said, well, what about my wife? You guys paid last year. And they said, well, that was extraordinary. We don't ever do that. We have a policy. Again, you can imagine how it would get out of hand. And so we can't do that. But she's welcome to come up if she wanted to. Well, we had such late notice that the flights were just incredibly expensive. And so we just talked it over. She said, well, I won't go. You just go up for, and have a good time, whatever. I've already been there, seen it all, and I have to sit, they might make me sit out. Well, they said she couldn't be in the war room for sure this time. So she said, I'll just be sitting around anyway. So a week goes by, and Rick Lagina calls and says, hey, I hear they won't pay for your wife to come up. And I said, yeah, she's a little disappointed, but she understands. And he said, well, she's coming up. And he said, I'm paying for you guys. I'm paying for her flight, and I'm paying for you guys to stay as long as you want, within reason. And I said, well, we can only stay for the 5 days. And Prometheus was picking up 2 of them. He said, well, I'll pick up the other 3. He said, whatever they don't pick up, you send me a bill for it after the fact. After you get home and you get it all sorted out, send me a bill, and I'll pay it. And he did. And that's just incredible. But he said, the reason why, he said, your wife has proofread all your books. And I know she's been a part of it. I know you've been nagging her with all the things you're finding out every day for years. And it's just not right that she can't be a part of this. But he said, I understand Prometheus. They have to have some kind of standards to stick by, or they'd be, they would just get so out of hand. And I totally understand that, that it would be ridiculous. Everybody and his brother would want to go. And, and then they'd be liable for all those people and liable for all the bills and all that, So they have to have a standard that they stick by, and I understand that and appreciate that. So that was so nice. Now, I don't know that that'll ever happen again, but I suspect that if they asked me to come back up again, which I don't know that they're going to in any way, shape, or form.
Well, season 7 starts filming soon.
Well, and that's the thing is, like last year when I was up there and I said something about season 6, and Rick says, yeah, if there is one. And I said, well, it's all over the internet that there's going to be one. He said, they're guessing. He said, I don't even know if there's going to be a season 6. So what that told me was there was negotiations going on, because there's 3 entities. There's the History Channel, Prometheus, and the Oak Island team.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that there's a lot of talk back and forth about contracts and who gets what share of the pie and all that kind of stuff, that's stuff that we would never see. But I did think I saw an official, well, actually it was when Matty Blake did that show a week or so ago, when he actually said we'll see it on season 7, and one of them nodded and agreed. So I thought, well, must be there is one then. Must be they got all their negotiations out of the way this year, and there is going to be a season 7. But I did not get any indication that I would be involved in it. They were partially concerned that I wouldn't spill any beans that I knew about this new discovery, which I didn't know very much about it at all. I learned more about it from them asking me not to say anything about it than I knew. But the other was one where I was at May. Since I was there, they wanted to know how certain things developed. It was the first on their part, partially was a request that I don't say anything about these items that were found. Which is all understandable. But they never once said, because we intend to have you come back up, or anything like that, So I don't know what the future holds in that, but I do know, I can at least say, because it was on TV, that Rick Lagina said right to me while I was in the war room, we're not finished with you yet, or we're not going to let you get away yet, or something like that.
Makes sense, yeah.
But that could have just been, send us more emails, send us more emails. So I don't know what the future holds as far as the Curse of Oak Island goes, but I'm still working with Rick and Doug and Craig and Charles. You know, I have a list of people I send the emails to, you know, that respond or, you know, are interested. You know, there are other people that just never responded in any way, shape, or form. So I figured, well, I'm dropping you off the email list then, because if you're showing, but like Craig, he thanks me a lot by email, and Doug and I emailed back and forth a lot, and then Rick thanks me on the phone. So, you know, I know they appreciate it. And he said, don't ever quit sending them, because he said every one of them's a history lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. You know. Well, I'm just looking right now. According to Next Season TV, they're still in the pending status for season 7 information. So it's going to be...
And, you know, there could be two reasons for it. One could be the negotiations, and the other could be just a big tease like they like to do. Because, God, they don't have cliffhangers. Nobody does. You know? I mean, I feel like I'm watching the Green Hornet when I was 14 years old again.
Wow, you did a flashback there.
Come back next week, you know.
That's a flashback there. But anyway, we're going to have to start cutting this short. I've only got about 17 minutes. Now, people, if you want to see James McQuiston on the show, he just was on the episode number 20 from season 6 called Short Days, Tall Nights. You can check it out on iTunes, wherever you can get your streaming shows. Just a little information. When it aired that night, you made 3.05 million viewers.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a big one. And catch the season finale tomorrow night. This is April 30th. On history. It's an episode called Lost and Founding, and the write-up is the team is handed a shocking new theory that may connect the Oak Island treasure to the birth of a nation. The guys are faced with deciding whether to quit or continue, plus a preview of the curse of Civil War gold.
And, you know, I have an inkling of what that's about based on the theorists that they have, but I don't know if he'll even bring up this subject. But if you'll remember back when we were first talking, I told you that the Alexander family moved to Virginia and founded Alexandria, Virginia, right next to Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
So whether that little snippet will make it on the show or not, that's certainly a point that could be added to their little graph that they're going to make about that theory. So I don't discount that. I don't know if I think the Oak Island treasure made it there, but I've always credited the Scots with, you know, basically the founding of America anyway. The Scotch-Irish, in the form of Scotch-Irish, they led the revolution. And the Declaration of Arbroath that I mentioned a while ago lasted all these years. There's elements of that are right in our own Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, and there's books out about it. And there's a story that somebody brought, some guy from overseas brought Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson a trunk, and in it was a bunch of books. And they think that possibly the Declaration of Arbroath was in there too. And they just brought them over there for reference that this is, you know, we've been fighting for freedom for 300 or 400 years. And this is what we've been through. So you guys got to keep this in mind when you're setting up what. And one of the things that was extraordinary about the Declaration of Arbroath, that was when Robert the Bruce won or became king. And it said right in it, even though he had sacrificed his family and everything and practically his life to free Scotland, it said right in there that if he isn't a good king, we'll get rid of him too.
Yeah.
You know, so it was like, you know, we're tired of taking people's crap. And we want to live a good life too. We don't mind having a leader, but that leader better lead us the right way or we're going to get a different leader. Yeah. And, you know, those are American values right there. You know,
That's definitely the American values.
Yeah.
Now, everybody head on over to Amazon, order yourself a hard copy of James' books, Oak Island Missing Links, Oak Island 1632, and Oak Island Knights. And based on the author's recommendation, read them Knights 1632 and then Missing Links. Read them in backward order and get that kind of, piecing the whole history together and how it came together. Where else can they find you?
Well, I have a website at oakislandgold.com, and I have a fair amount on it, but I have a theories area that's passworded right now because some of that's in the books, and also I wanted to refine some of it because as I find out new information, you got to, it's kind of hard to go back and rewrite your book.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
You have your theory on a website, you can do it in the afternoon.
Yep.
So, but I do give that out to some people, whatever. But then I also did a really cool studio YouTube, and it's, if you put in Oak Island Knights James McQuiston, it should come up. And I did it with local community access TV. It cost me some money, but they did a wonderful production on it, and I give some information there too. So I would say go to YouTube for just, I don't know the actual address. It would be crazy to try to repeat that, but when I'm looking for it myself, I put in Oak Island Knights James McQuiston, and it comes up. Okay. And then oakislandgold.com is the website. And actually, I should put links to the video on the website too to cross-pollinate everything. But I just find I'm retired as of 2014, and I have never been busier. And my dad told me years ago, I don't know how I ever held down a full-time job. I'm so busy. And I laughed at it. Now I don't laugh at it anymore because it's true. But part of it is you're trying to make some extra bucks because Uncle Sam doesn't pay what I used to get paid. But part of it is you get involved in these hobbies and things, and they just suck up time like you can't believe. Just like today. Who would think we've been on here, what, almost 3 hours?
Almost 3 hours, yeah.
Yeah, but who would think that? And all we've been doing is chit-chatting.
Yeah.
And having fun. So
it's great fun. I love it. So, definitely check it out. We'll have the links and everything right on our website. We're going to be making an Oak Island page, so you'll be able to check that out later this week. I got to get everything put together, all of James' information, links to his books, to his website, and we'll link his video right on there as well, so everybody can check that out. James, thank you so much. Make sure you keep us abreast when you get the next call from either Marty or Rick when you're heading out there. Maybe we can do a show while you're out on the island.
Okay, and a special hello to anybody I know in Germany or Austria or Poland or any place like that, because I know a few people. So special hello to them, and thank you for talking with me. It's been fun. I just love doing this. I'm a storyteller at heart, I guess.
This was truly a great show. I want to thank James McQuiston for coming onto the show and talking with us extensively about this. This was a really, truly eye-opening adventure, and I really did love it. This is exactly the kind of stories that Global Discovery Adventures is all about. The story of treasures, these intrigues, romance, betrayal, theft, robbery, the birth of nations. These are truly epic tales, and something that is one of a kind. I want to go ahead and thank each and every one of you for tuning in to the Global Discovery Adventures radio podcast. It's been an honor. I'm glad that you're listening in and giving me a chance to talk into your ear holes. I enjoy doing this, and I hope you guys enjoy the subject matter and how the show is turning out. If you like this one, please subscribe and listen to the other 5 seasons of the show. Share this with everybody you know. We're going to be having some amazing guests coming in during the course of the next year. You would be remiss to miss any one of them. Check it out. It's available on iTunes. It's available on Spreaker, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. Absolutely free. And it's a good way to pass some time while you're driving around and stuff. And it's family friendly, so you can listen to it in the car with everybody else. All right. So make sure you head on over to gdapod.com and check us out. We're going to be having some shirts and stuff available here really soon. One of a kind thing. So double check that once it shows up. Just keep checking back at the website. They're going to be available. So, yeah. And as for myself, 42,
Producer Luke and Producer Dave, we want to thank every single one of you for checking it out. Make sure you check out the Archaeology and Metal Detecting magazine while you're at it, and check out our friends at rudus.com.pl, makers of the wonderful Altar 71, which did Producer Dave and Producer Luke and myself also use. We love these things. We swear by them, and we know that anybody brand new to the hobby or been in it for a while will pick it up and be able to use it, no problems whatsoever. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you out on the fields. Let's dig it up, y'all.
Let's dig it up, y'all.